Chapter 1790 Red Energy Crystal. For the next few days, Zhang Yi and his group stayed in Samaron City and waited to see what would happen. The intelligence they could gather in Frans was too little, and relying on the information provided by Ling alone could only give them a basic understanding of Frans. However, Zhang Yi's next goal was to find more mechanical legions and collect those advanced mechanical life forms, especially that kind of super-large mechanical life forms. Only by obtaining that kind of powerful source could the future cosmic escape or the underground fortress plan become smooth. But at the moment, it looked like there was also a large element of accident in being able to encounter the mechanical legion that time. Frans was simply too big. Without the help of Frans higher-ups, Zhang Yi and the others would be like headless flies here, not even knowing what was happening everywhere. However, right now, the forces of Frans, represented by Paja, were clearly jealous of Zhang Yi and the others, and did not want them to gain too much from the mechanical legion. Zhang Yi was not in a hurry at all. He believed that sooner or later, the other party would come over and beg him one day. Because he had fought with the underground civilization too many times, he knew deep down that with the current strength displayed by the mechanical civilization, it was simply not something Frans could fight against. Just in time, he could take advantage of this time to take a break and have Lu Karen and Yang Xinxing continue to research the secrets of the mechanical life forms. And during this time, the mutant troops from other kingdoms and forces had also arrived in Karen City one after another. Among these people, Zhang Yi only recognized the mutant troops of Columbia. There was his old acquaintance Newton inside. As for the others, he did not know anything about them. All forces were nominally here to defend against the invasion of the mechanical civilization, but in reality, there was still a competitive relationship between the countries and organizations. However, watching the arrival of the various countries' mutant forces one after another, the senior side of Frans began to have different thoughts in their hearts. Paja stood on a high building under the cover of a snowstorm, his eyes looking in all directions of the city. Nowadays, all the major kingdoms and powers around the world, powerful mutants had basically arrived. With such a huge force gathered in Frans and all set to become their helpers, a sense of grandeur rose in Paja's heart. Let's utilize them and make Frans great again. Behind him, several Frans executives were sitting on the sofa drinking steaming coffee. Hearing Paja's words, several people looked at each other before speaking. These are all world-class powerhouses. Are you really sure you can command them? Don't get backfired at that time instead. A senior Frans official with a large back-combed hair said. Paja smiled faintly and said confidently back, as long as the benefits are distributed properly, I'm sure they'll willingly work for us. A bald old man next to him stared at him, but at the moment, the situation doesn't seem that ideal. Take for example the Chaos team from Huashu Kingdom, and the Emperor Indra team from Brahma. After they came to Frans, they didn't even greet us and started moving on their own. And, he said here with a disgruntled cold snort in his tone, the loot they obtained in Frans territory, they even collected it all by themselves without giving us a single cent. This is really excessive. Big Back also said, whether it's Huashu Kingdom or Brahma, they are both kingdoms with great power in our neighborhood. Even they are beyond our control, let alone the mutant organizations in the world. Paja smiled. With his hands behind his back, he took the old mug with the red pentagram printed on it next to him, took a sip of coffee, and said slowly, it's precisely because there are many mutant organizations coming here that we have the means to maneuver around them and maximize our benefits. Oh? Then what is your plan? The big-backed official looked at him curiously. Paja reached out and pointed to the floor beneath his feet. This is Frans. They need us to provide them with information if they want to continue to benefit from the war with the mechanical civilization. Otherwise, they're like headless flies. Bald frowned and said with a cold gaze, but we need their power. Relying on Frans' power alone, I'm afraid it will be difficult to fight against that powerful underground civilization. If things go too far, it won't be good. Paja laughed, I know the score. So it'll be a nice exchange of benefits. He raised a finger. So my plan is that in the next operation, we, Fremons, will provide intelligence to the mutant forces of each country. Then let them go against the forces of the mechanical civilization. And then split all the loot we get, 30 to 70%. Big Back frowned. 70%? Wouldn't that be too much? They might not be able to agree. Paja said, 70% that's for others, we only need 30%. He spread his arms out. However, we don't need to send out troops. Only responsible for providing intelligence and logistical supplies. Let them rush to the front line to fight, to bleed and sacrifice. Accumulating less will make more, and instead of retaining our living forces, we, Fremons, will also be able to obtain a large amount of resources. Isn't that wonderful? Big Back and Bald Head exchanged a glance, and the two of them fell into the middle of contemplation. Big Back took out a box of cigars from the inside pocket of his upper body tweed coat and smoked a few puffs after lighting it. Only after a long time did he say, "This plan is indeed very good. We can not only retain our own living forces, but we can also obtain a large amount of resources. This way, the Pantheon's mutants will be able to stay in Samaron City and protect us senior personnel. It's simply 3 birds with 1 stone." Paja narrowed his eyes and shook his head with a smile. "No, it should be 4 in 1. The Big Back looked at him. "What else?" Paja raised a finger and said with a smirk, "By using this opportunity, we can also weaken the strength of the mutant forces of other kingdoms. This will enhance our Fremons' international competitiveness." The Bald Head and the Big Back laughed out loud. "Paja, you are truly a sinister and clever fellow. Sure enough, no matter who I offend in the future, I can't offend you." There was laughter in the middle of the office. It was true that just as Alexei had said, people had different positions and different ways of thinking. Paja's group of people wouldn't even think about the greater good of humanity, nor would they consider the deaths and lives of ordinary people. They only cared about how to maximize their own interests, and for that reason, they would not hesitate to sacrifice anyone. Paja was certain that the other countries' mutant organizations that had already gotten a taste of the sweetness would not hesitate to join the plan even if they knew full well what he was up to. However, Chaos of Washu Kingdom and Emperor Indra of Brahma. Oh, these two are both despicable fellows. When the time comes to assign you guys a mission, I'll treat you well. Paja's eyes flashed with a fierce color. Whether it was out of personal grudges or considering geopolitics, he had enough reasons to weaken Brahma and Washu Kingdom. 3 days passed by in a flash. During this time, there was no more news of the Mechanical Legion attacking the human cities. However, Zhang Yi guessed that it wasn't that it didn't happen, but that no human towns appeared on the Mechanical Legion's course of action. Alexei had said that humans were like ants on the ground in the eyes of the mechanical civilization. They would not intentionally trample them to death, they would only accidentally step on them when they were on their way. However, what he wanted was not to wait in silence. During this period, he went to look for Paja, but Paja excused himself with various reasons. Zhang Yi knew that Paja was retaliating against himself, but he was not in a hurry and came back quietly, continuing to work with Lu Karen and Yang Xinxin to crack the secrets of the mechanical life forms. In 3 days' time, they finally broke through the mechanical life form's energy source without any outside disturbance. For 3 days, Lu Karen and Zhou Qir barely rested, relying on Zhou Qir to use her doctor ability to eliminate their fatigue and complete the uninterrupted cracking. Zhang Yi entered Muyan's shadow space, and a few people were the ones working inside. The remains of that huge mega-life form lay quietly to the side, and in the center were all sorts of complicated electronic equipment. The huge energy source, which had been split into 2 halves by Lu Karen, had a complex internal structure that Zhang Yi couldn't understand at all. He didn't even see the imaginary lines or circuit boards, he only saw some special crystals or metals with complex colors and complicated patterns on them. Zhang Yi had a headache from looking at it. He didn't understand this thing either, only from Lu Karen and Yang Xinxin's eyes. he could see their excitement. Lou Karen was fine. She herself was a mechanical fanatic and was extremely interested in all kinds of new technology. However, if Yang Xinxin, who was not happy or angry except in front of Zhang Yi, could be made to behave like this, then it would be of extraordinary significance. How's it going? What have you all discovered? Don't make it too complicated, you guys know, I can't understand. So keep it simple and speak in a simple manner. Yang Xinxin looked at Zhang Yi and smiled. That's good, I'll try my best to perform what I should perform with you. Playing the stunt ended, her eyes glittered with a fluttering light as she pointed at the huge computer in front of her. This was currently the most advanced computer in the world, the Tiana 9. Zhang Yi had asked for it from Blizzard City. This new mechanical language, I've already completely figured it out. And in terms of industrial manufacturing, Karen has also been able to realize a replica of it. It's just that it's made of very special materials, with some elements not yet found on the periodic table, presumably synthetic. But this is not a problem for Karen. She can completely utilize her supernatural abilities to artificially synthesize these substances. Zhang Yi's head tilted. So? Lou Karen's little face flushed with excitement as she clenched her fists and said to Zhang Yi in a somewhat trembling voice, so, theoretically speaking, we can replicate this kind of energy source. Zhang Yi keenly discovered the crux of the matter. Theoretically speaking? What about practically? Lou Karen scratched his head in embarrassment. Of course not at the moment. Many of the materials are brand new and have never been discovered by human civilization. Therefore it will take some time to build. But brother, give me a month's time at most. With enough materials, I can definitely do it. She squeezed her small fists hard towards Zhang Yi with a defiant look. Zhang Yi smiled and nodded towards her with an approving expression. I believe that Karen and Xinxin have always been the best. Yang Xinxin pulled Zhang Yi's sleeve and said to him mysteriously, these techniques will be very useful in the future. But right now, there are other very important things that you will enjoy. Zhang Yi blinked with some curiosity. What things? Yang Xinxin walked to the side and picked up a red gemstone that was even bigger than her small white hand from the plate, handing it to Zhang Yi. This is the real source. Zhang Yi had seen this before. He tried to recall that it was among the images that Alexei had given him, and the body of that species of humanoid creature was loaded with this red gem. He received it in his hand, but he did not feel anything. This thing was no different from an ordinary ruby. It looked crystal clear, and could be sold at roadside stalls for as much as $1 or $20. This is the energy source? It doesn't feel like anything. Zhang Yi lifted it up and said while staring at it. Yang Xinxin nodded. This is where the mechanical civilization is powerful. This kind of energy stone should originally possess a very high energy radiation, but they used a special technique to block off the radiation, which will not harm the living organisms, and can control its energy very well. Zhang Yi looked at the tray over there, which contained 5 more such rubies. In other words, 6 palm-sized rubies would be enough to support the operation of a super-large mechanical life form. From this, it could be imagined how huge the energy inside this kind of ruby was. Another new type of energy. Even more so than the Yuan stone we unearthed before. Zhang Yi muttered, I finally understand why White Dragon civilization, which is obviously so close to the Yuan stone vein, has never mined it. It turns out that it just doesn't see it. A piece of sugar dropped on the ground by a human would become a treasure that would make the ant colony roar. That was probably the concept. We intend to apply it to the Tianhai City fortress and mechs in the future. Yang Xinxin smiled, including the exoskeleton mech you're wearing, brother. Zhang Yi's eyes instantly widened. Wouldn't that be the same as carrying a warship on me at all times? Then wouldn't the submarine dragon armor's combat capability fly into the sky? What's so strange about that? Yang Xinxin laughed lightly. The mega-mechanical life forms of mechanical civilizations can all fight against black chariot-level mutants. Civilizations that reach a certain height possess such a level themselves. Zhang Yi's heart could not help but let out a sigh of relief. Yes, underestimating the power of technology can easily lead to big losses. Looking at the ruby in his hand, Zhang Yi's heart was elated, but there was also a hint of worry hidden in his heart. Just by getting a part of the mechanical civilization's technology, they could make a huge leap in their civilization. Then the mechanical civilization will really get angry one day and have a war with the human civilization and the destruction power. That they will erupt is simply unimaginable.